How's it going, everyone? Dylan here from AYCB, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to play Tidal Blades Heroes of the Reef. And this is the first game that the box is so big that I couldn't even properly fit it on the table with everything else going on. So Tidal Blades is a 1 to 4 player game with asynchronous powers on each of the characters, and there's 4 characters in total. And you're going to be competing in different challenges around the world, as well as fighting monsters, and ultimately moving up the champion board, scoring the most points, and being named the leader of the Tidal Blades and the overall winner of the game. Now, this game looks like it has a lot going on, and at first glance it can look a little confusing, but ultimately when you get down to its core, it's pretty simple after you understand the mechanics and know everything that there is to know in this game. So I'm going to help you through it, and I'm going to hopefully help you get this to the table just a little bit quicker. Let me show you how to play. So I'm not going to go over every single step of the setup process because the rulebook does a good job of laying that all out for you. What I will say is you have to set up all the boards as I have them set up here. You'll also want to set up the stunt deck here to have the stunt cards, as well as the challenge cards at the Citadel of Time, and you'll want to set up the monster cards in the fold. You'll also want to set up the market cards by having the market deck next to the Druska ring, as well as 3 face-up market cards to go with them. After that, you'll select one of the 4 characters to be your character for the game, and you'll follow the rulebook's player setup, which basically sets you up with your starting character ability, as well as your shell shield, and all your dials will be reset to 0 to begin the game if they've been moved from a previous game. You'll also get your starting resources, which is mainly 2 of the novice dice, as well as some starting shells and fruit, depending on if you're going first, second, third, fourth, depending on how many players are in your game. You'll also get a single secret personal goal card. There's 3 for each character that are possible to have. At the start of the game, when you're setting up your player board, you'll select one of these 3 randomly, and that will be your secret objective for the game, and just an additional way for you to score some points. So Tidal Blades is played over 4 rounds. On each round, you're going to have anywhere between 2 to 4 turns. Now, I say between 2 and 4 turns because it depends on the round you're on. You're going to be gaining more action discs to be able to do more things each round. So for instance, at the start of the game, you're going to have 2 action discs, which means you're going to get 2 turns on the first round. On the second round, you will gain a 3rd action disc, which means that for rounds 2 and 3, you'll have 3 turns on each one. And then finally, on the 4th and final round of the game, you'll gain your 4th and final action disc, which means on that last round, you're going to have the most turns, which is 4. So depending on the round, you'll have a different amount of turns. On your turn, you will complete 4 possible actions. First, you'll move your character and their action discs to an action space on an island of your choice. Now, you'll be familiar with this mechanic if you've played any worker placement games before. You're basically just choosing an action on one of the boards and carrying out the action that's on that space. In this case, by going here, I will gain 2 fruit and the starting player marker. Next, you'll check the island's unique bonus action and carry that out as well. Every island has a unique bonus effect that you also gain by visiting it. Let's go over those now. At the Citadel of Time, you will draw 2 challenge cards, either from the face-up cards in the display or from the face-down deck. Note you can split your choices between both options, and if you draw from the face-up cards, you can replenish the card before choosing your second card. Your chosen 2 cards will now go in your hand, and they will become available for you to attempt. We'll go over challenge cards and how to attempt them in a little bit. At the Chronoseum, you will draw a stunt card and add it to your hand. Stunt cards are one-time use cards that you may use at any point in your turn once per turn. Once you use the stunt card, it is discarded. Stunt card abilities will vary in power level depending on your spirit trait on your character board. We'll go over how you can increase all 4 of these traits in a little bit, but for now, just know that the higher your spirit level is, the more powerful your stunt cards are going to be for you. At Lamara Stadium, you will move the boat forward 1 space as a bonus effect. Whatever space the boat lands on is the bonus reward you will gain. For instance, if I move the boat onto this space, I will gain 1 shell to my personal supply. At Druska Ring, you will have a choice for your bonus action. You can either choose to gain 1 fruit, or you can choose to make a purchase from the market. Market cards show their cost on the left side and their reward on the right side. So for instance, buying this card will cost 2 fruit, and for purchasing it, I will gain 1 challenge card from the top of the deck and 1 shell token to my supply. And lastly, the Folds bonus action allows you to fight a monster at the action space you visited. For instance, going here gains me 3 shells and allows me to fight this monster. If you visit the Fold and there are no monsters available, flip the top card of the monster deck face up onto the deck itself, and you must immediately fight this monster. And that's it for the 3rd step of your turn. Before I move on to the final step, let me just say that I'm not going to go over every action space that there is on the board here, but like most worker placement games, Once you start to learn the iconography, they're all pretty self-explanatory, and there shouldn't be really many trip-ups. And if there is, it's all laid out really, really nicely in the rulebook. And if you have any questions, obviously you can feel free to leave a comment or send me a message directly as well. But I'll go over a couple of them here just to give you a little bit of an idea. So for instance, going to spots like this would gain you 2 shells. There are other spots that will gain you shells. However many shells are depicted is how many shells you would gain. Likewise, whenever you see the fruit icon, that would mean you would gain some fruit. And whenever you see this card icon, you would gain a stunt card. Spots with this icon refresh your dice, and the icon inside the arrow indicates how many dice you can refresh. So if you go here, you can refresh all your dice, hence the infinity symbol. Whereas here, you will refresh an amount of dice equal to your resilience level. We'll get into dice refreshing in just a little bit. So there's one final step to your turn, and it's optional if you would like to do it, and that is to attempt a challenge card. That means that you will look at the challenge cards in your hand and you'll be able to attempt one if you are on the proper arena. So challenge cards can only be attempted if you are at either the Chronoseum, Lamara Stadium, or Droska Ring. Those are the 3 arena locations. If you have a challenge card with a matching symbol and you are on that location, you can end your turn by attempting a challenge card. For instance, this challenge has the Chronoseum symbol below it, so I would need to be on the Chronoseum to attempt this challenge at the end of my turn. After declaring that you'll attempt the challenge, you will choose the dice with which you will attempt it. You do not necessarily get to choose to use all of your dice. Instead, refer to your focus trait level. Whatever your focus trait is, that is how many dice you may use during a single challenge. So even if you had 5 dice but your focus level was 1, you may only roll 1 die for the challenge. You may temporarily increase your dice allotment by consuming fruit. Each fruit you consume will increase the amount of dice you can roll for this challenge only. Your focus trait level will not increase. Keep in mind that different dice have different faces and opportunities to match symbols. I'll go over dice in the next section. After you've selected your dice, it's time to roll them. You are trying to match the symbols that are on the challenge card. Symbols with this solid outer line must be matched to complete it. Symbols with a dotted outer line, however, are push-it challenges and are not necessary to complete the challenge. However, matching these symbols as well will gain you extra rewards. Before you roll, grab the danger die that matches the current round. Round 1 uses the white danger die, round 2 and 3 use the yellow one, and round 4 uses the red one. You will roll this danger die with your dice. After you roll, check to see how many symbols you matched and set them aside. Now check the value of the danger die. If there is at least 1 red X showing, you need to lose a die. It doesn't matter how many red X's there are on the die face, you will only ever need to lose a single die. You can block this loss, however, by placing a shell token from your supply onto your shell shield for each red X showing. Doing this cancels out the loss of a die for this roll. Otherwise, you will need to lose a die before considering it towards your challenge card symbols. After the danger dice calculation, check to see if you matched all the required symbols. If you did, the challenge is complete. If you didn't, you can choose to roll any dice that did not match again. But when you do, you must also re-roll the danger die and once again use shells from your supply to block die losses or simply lose the die. At any point, you can choose to withdraw from the challenge if it isn't worth it for you to keep trying, or if you just think you can't beat it. The challenge will be discarded and you won't be able to add it to your player board for endgame points or for the fighting style bonus in monster fights, which I'll explain in a little bit. However, you will still gain trait bonuses for each symbol you successfully did match, so there are still rewards to be gained for withdrawing from a challenge rather than completing it. Either way, whether you succeed or withdraw, count up all the symbols that you matched. For each one, move your trait dial on your character board up 1 spot in the matching trait. Note, sometimes when you move a trait dial up, it won't actually increase its value. The spots that lead to a value increase in that trait will be shown on the outer ring so you know when to expect the value to increase. Now, move all dice that you used in this challenge from your available dice section on your character board to your spent section. These dice are now no longer available to use until they have been refreshed. If you completed the challenge, place it under the appropriate spot at the bottom of your character board. If the judge character was on the island where you completed the challenge, move up 1 spot on the champion board. If this completed challenge creates a unique set under your character board, that is, you now have one of each type of island challenge, you immediately gain a diversity bonus and move up 2 spots on the champion board. And that's it for challenges. That is the last step of your turn. At this point, play would pass to the next player, and we will continue on doing those actions in that order. Now, if that felt like a lot when it came to challenges, don't worry. That's pretty much the biggest mechanic when it comes to Tidal Blades. Understanding how challenges and dice rolling works will pretty much be the biggest learning curve, I would say, when it comes to this game. And even then, it's not all that complicated once you do it once or twice. So let's actually get into the dice themselves now, and I can explain what's all involved with them. Anytime you gain dice, you will place them in your active dice section. When they are used, they move to your spent dice section. In total, between both sections, you can have a maximum of 6 dice at one time. In order to move dice from your spent area to your active area again, they need to be refreshed. There are 2 spots on the board where you can refresh dice during play. At the end of each round, some dice will automatically refresh. The amount of your dice that refresh automatically is dependent on your resilience trait level. For each level of resilience, you may refresh 1 die at the end of the round. So if my resilience was 3, I would be able to refresh 3 dice at the end of the round automatically. Dice can also be upgraded into better versions. There are 4 levels of dice: Novice, Initiate, Elite, and Guild. Each level will increase the likelihood of rolling certain traits, as well as the frequency of wild spots. Likewise, each level, besides Novice, has 2 different versions, red or blue. The version, whether red or blue, determines which trait symbols will appear on the dice. For instance, the red Initiate die features focus and spirit symbols exclusively, whereas the blue Initiate die features resilience and synergy symbols. When a die is upgraded from a novice dice, you can choose whether to upgrade down the blue path or the red path, depending on which symbols you desire for your strategy this game. Likewise, when you upgrade from an elite die to the final stage of a guild die, you can choose again to focus on a single trait from that path. For instance, the red elite die would upgrade into a spirit-specific trait die or a focus-specific trait die. There's a chart in the rulebook and on the player aid to show you the dice upgrade path in case you need any reminders. Note that blank faces on dice do nothing, and question mark faces on dice are wild and can be any trait you choose. So dice are upgraded at the end of the round automatically, but the amount of dice that are upgraded is based on your resilience level, just like refreshing dice. Now the tricky thing here to keep in mind is that the dice that you choose when it comes to refreshing and upgrading have to be the same. So if you had 6 dice and your resilience level was 3, you can't choose 3 dice to upgrade and a different 3 dice to refresh. If your resilience level is 3, you're choosing 3 dice of your 6, and those are the 3 dice that you're both refreshing and upgrading. Okay, so with dice out of the way, let's go back to the player boards and let's go over all 4 of the different traits and what they specifically are targeted at and why you might want to specialize in one over the other. Spirit relates to your stunt power for stunt cards. The higher your spirit, the more powerful your stunt cards will be. For instance, this stunt card, Midnight Training, will give you a different reward depending on what your spirit level is. If your spirit level is only 1, you will simply gain a shell, whereas if your spirit level is 2, you will gain a novice die, and the reward increases as your spirit level increases. As a general rule of thumb, the higher your spirit trait is, the better the stunt card will be for you. Focus affects your maximum roll ability. Whatever your focus is, that's how many dice you can roll for a single challenge or monster battle. Again, this can be temporarily increased with fruit consumption. Resilience reflects how many dice you can refresh and upgrade at the end of a round. And finally, synergy is how you will gain new character abilities and talents. Every time you turn the dial and reveal one of these character card icons, you may draw 2 cards from the top of your character ability deck and choose one to immediately put into play. You now have that ability for the rest of the game. The last thing to note is that at the end of the game, you will gain bonus points depending on how high each trait dial is. Note the bonus point icons on the outer edge to represent this. For each trait, you will gain an amount of points equal to whatever the highest amount is that you reached on each dial. As I mentioned, character cards are gained as you increase your synergy trait. When you gain them, you will actually gain them right in front of you, and they're there for the entire game unless they specifically say that you need to discard them to use them, but those are very rare. For the most case, they're just going to be in front of you. They just power up your abilities. They're basically going to take rules that are in the game and change them for a little bit for you, or just give you extra rewards for completing certain things around the board. All characters start with their shell shield in play, which is used to place shells on to block red X hits from the danger dice that would normally make you lose a die. Only 6 shells can remain on your shell shield. If at the end of your turn you have more than 6 shells on this card, you must discard down to 6. Your personal supply can have an unlimited number of shells, however. Besides preventing danger, there are two other abilities that you can discard shells to use from your shield. First is Time Leap. You can discard 4 shells from your shell shield card to set a die that you've already rolled to any face of your choice on that die. Again, these are discarded from your shell shield, not from your supply. Lastly, you can discard all 6 shells to use Mycronic Memory. This immediately refreshes 2 dice of your choice from your spent section. The last major mechanic to go over is monster battles. They honestly carry out pretty much in the same way that challenges do, but there are a couple key differences, so let's go over those now. First, each monster will have a fighting style weakness to the left of their name. Whatever symbol is shown there, refer to that symbol on your character board and count up the amount of challenge cards you've completed in that arena. You will gain a bonus die to roll against this monster that doesn't count against your dice limit of a level that is based on how many challenges you have completed in that fighting style. For instance, Colossal Spine Squid is weak to the Droska Arena fighting style, and I've completed 3 Droska Arena challenges. Thus, I would gain a level 3 elite die to roll as a bonus die. I can choose the red or the blue variety. In addition to this bonus die, you can roll an amount of dice equal to your focus level, just like challenges, and again, you can eat fruit to temporarily increase the amount of dice you can use as well. To fight the monster, roll the dice you have selected as well as the danger die. You are attempting to match the symbols on the monster card, much like challenges. The key difference here is that you do not necessarily need to defeat the monster this round. You may roll as many times as you wish, rolling the danger die each time, but if you've, say, matched 4 symbols and wish to stop or have no more dice, but the monster is not yet defeated, you will cover each symbol that you have matched with one of your character markers, and the monster will remain in the fold to be fought again in future turns, whether by you or another player. And although the player who delivers the finishing blow will gain a kill bonus, you will still be rewarded with the reward listed on the card if you contributed at least 1 hit to the monster's defeat. Note, some of the symbols on a monster card are harder to complete. There are armored spots that show a different colored background. For these, specific levels of dice are needed to be used to defeat them. For instance, the blue or red backgrounds need to have their traits rolled with initiate dice to cover them. The ones with the black edges need to have an elite die used. There are also some symbols that are joined together. These need to be rolled during a single monster fight. You cannot roll one of them, cover it, and then return to roll the other. The biggest and most important difference when it comes to monster battles is that any dice you used and rolled against those monsters do not go to your spent dice section. They are gone from your supply and actually go back to the general supply. So it's a lot more dangerous and risky to fight monsters. You have to be a little bit more sure of yourself that you're going to be able to get some progress done. Otherwise, you could just be wasting dice. When you defeat a monster, all players with character markers on that monster will receive the reward listed on the card. The player who delivers the final blow will receive the kill bonus. If any spots that you covered during dice rolls featured a trophy symbol, you move up on the champion board 1 time for each one. The last thing to note about monsters is that they can invade and escape. At the end of each round, monsters will invade the city. To do this, roll the 8-sided die. If the roll is a 1 to 5, the monster at the inner reed will invade. If the roll is a 6 to 8, the monster at the fold's edge will invade. There's an invasion penalty listed on each monster, and each player who does not have at least 1 character marker on that monster will suffer that penalty. After rolling the invasion effect, all monsters advance 1 space. Any monster at the fold's edge would move to the inner reef. A new card will be drawn from the deck and placed on fold's edge. And any monster at the inner reef will escape completely and be removed from the game. When a monster escapes, any player with no character markers on that card moves down 1 space on the champion board. So as I mentioned at the beginning, there are 4 rounds in Tidal Blades, and at the end of each round, there's a series of upkeep actions you're going to carry out before you go on to the next round. Let's just go over those quickly. First is monster invasions, which I just explained. Next, monsters advance down the track. Third, monsters flee from the inner reef space. Fourth, refresh and upgrade your dice depending on your resilience level. Fifth, collect your action discs back from the board to your personal supply. Sixth, rotate the judge clockwise to the next spot. Note the judge can only ever be on one of the 3 arena boards, Lamara Stadium, Droska Ring, and the Chronoseum. It will rotate clockwise around those 3 locations only. And lastly, whoever is first on the champion board places a character token on the bonus point area for the current round. After that, simply advance the round marker to the next round, and you're basically carrying out all the actions of the players again, and you're doing this for 4 rounds, and then at the end of that, the player with the most points wins. Now there's a few different ways you're going to be gaining points. The biggest one will obviously be challenge cards. You'll gain points for each challenge card you completed. It's listed in the bottom right-hand corner of each challenge card. The ones that are under your player board that you've completed will gain you points at the end of the game. Likewise, for each of the 4 different traits on the character board, depending on how high you rotate that dial, you're going to gain some bonus points that are listed on the outer ring. For instance, if you increase your focus to the max, you might gain 5 bonus points for it, whereas if you left your resilience at 0 the entire game, or at 1 I should say, you would get 0 bonus points for that. So depending on each one, you're going to gain a different amount of points. You're also going to gain some points based on the champion board. There's a few different ways you'll gain points there. At the end of each round, like I mentioned, you're going to gain points depending on if you were first on the champion board at the end of each of those rounds. It's only a single point, but a single point can make the difference. Likewise, at the end, whoever is the furthest along the champion board is going to gain an additional 3 points. Second place will get 2 points. Third will get 1. And finally, there are markers across the champion board, and you're going to gain points depending if you've met those thresholds. So for instance, if I made it to this spot at the end of the game, I would gain 6 points, whereas if I only made it as far as this, I would gain 4 points. The spot at the very end can only be held by 1 player. Whoever makes it there first will gain 10 points, and no one else can join them on that spot. And the last thing you'll gain points for is how many hits you dealt to monsters throughout the game. So you're going to want to keep a tally based on your character tokens of how many hits you actually dealt to monsters. Whenever a monster is defeated, just keep the character tokens that were on it aside in piles for each player. That way you can just add them up. You'll gain 1 point for each hit you dealt to a monster. If there's any undefeated monsters at the end of the game with character tokens on them, those do count. You will gain a point for those as well. Just add them to the piles. After that, the player with the most points wins, and they will be named the leader of the Tidal Blades. And that's pretty much all there is to Tidal Blades. I know it seems like it's kind of complicated, but really the mechanics themselves are pretty simple. And once you learn how to carry out challenges and monster battles, that's really the biggest twist on the the worker placement mechanic. And then there's obviously some set collection and hand management. But overall, I'm hoping that this video will help you get this to the table just a little bit quicker and help you on your journey to playing this game. There's a couple things to note. There are advanced modes and some variants that I won't touch on here, but I'll let you discover in the rulebook. Mainly, there's legendary challenges you can add in, which are just essentially advanced challenges, harder to complete, bigger rewards, can change the game drastically. They're not honestly too complicated. After you've played this game once, I'd actually advise adding them in. It just makes things more interesting. Likewise, there's advanced market cards, and the cool thing with all this is that the rulebook breaks them up into buckets, and it actually will suggest adding this bucket or adding this bucket in, so you don't have to add all the advanced market cards in. It might say this is the black market bucket, and you add those in, and it'll add a sort of a theme of advanced cards in there. So there's a whole bunch of different things to experience, and of course, every character has their own unique abilities. I'm not going to go over all of those because that would take forever, but every character has something for you to discover, and you're going to play the game differently depending on which character you're using. So if you think you've understood and completely wrapped your head around Tidal Blades, but you've only played with Dust, next time when you play with Axel, for instance, it might feel completely different. That's part of the fun with this game. But otherwise, that's pretty much all you need to know to play. I hope this helped you out. If you liked the video, if it did help you out, leave a comment, leave us a like. It'll help us out a lot. We really appreciate it. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.